Well, I want to welcome all of you to this balmy session that we're going to have today, inside anyway, but you are the ones who are really concerned about this community because you have braved what otherwise would have been, one of those things where we would probably cancel, but our guest is coming all the way from the great state of Mississippi, and there's no way that I was going to cancel this. So we have opened up the live stream, so hopefully some people are joining us via live stream on YouTube. And if you want to go back and watch it later, it'll be archived on our website on the front page. So we do have that. But it's much better if you're here in person so we can dialogue and have some good conversation today. So I'm Dennis Atwood, pastor here at First Baptist, and we are excited about this session. How many of you ever participated in an asset mapping session? Anybody? Several? Good.
That's a good one.
Glad our leader has. It's going to be informative, and you're going to help really set the stage for what we're going to talk about and what the information we gather, concludes for us. So I know all of you are involved in the community in some way. So I thought maybe just to begin, if you would like to just state what organization you are representing, or you don't have to be with an organization in particular, but just state who you are very quickly and what group you're with. So we'll start over here.
My name is Constance Coppola. I'm with Wages. My coworkers on the way, Javier. I'm here for Wages.
All right. Okay, we'll pick up with Brian back there. Great.
I'm Robin Smith, and I'm a board member with Olive King's Children.
Oh, nice.
I'm Marsha Whitley, and I am a member of First Baptist, and I'm also here with Olive King's Children.
Great.
Selena Bennett, I'm a Presbyterian, so I'm outnumbered. But I'm the director of community supporting schools, and we operate 3 programs for the juvenile justice system. We have staff in 10 schools, 3 of them here in this end of the county.
And you are welcome. Okay, just so you'll know. Great.
Kathy Gardner, First Baptist.
Wayne Gardner, First Baptist, and head of the Bicycle Project.
Kelly Jolly, First Baptist.
Teresa Swamba, First Baptist.
All right. Well, we're glad each of you are here, and I'm going to start us off with a word of prayer, and then we'll introduce Jason and let him get started. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you once again for the opportunity to be together today in spite of less than ideal circumstances outside. We know that there's a reason that each of us is here today, and we thank you for the common concern and mission that we have for trying to make this community the very best that it can be for all the people who are here. And we pray that you would give us a unifying spirit to put our resources together to make an impact in this community where it's needed most. So guide us today. We thank you for Jason, and we pray safe travels upon him as he continues his journey. Be with us now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Jason Coker, friend from my hometown of Clinton, Mississippi, director of Cooperative Baptist Fellowship of Mississippi and Together for Hope. He's going to tell you about that. And I'm going to leave it at that and let you add anything else you want to say.
Excellent. Thanks so
Thank you,
much,
Jason.
Dennis. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I didn't see the hands of who's been to an asset mapping exercise before. Anybody? Okay. So you guys, this is old hat for you, but we're going to jump straight in. I'm going to do a presentation about who we are in Together for Hope and what we're trying to do. and then we'll follow it up with the asset mapping exercise itself. But we are going to have to move you around, and I know COVID's some tricky space, but I want to do 4 groups with this number of people who aren't in the same space on a daily basis. So we're going to kind of mix you up a little bit and get as close as you can be comfortably. We might have like a back sector and the front sector on each side to give you enough space to put you together. But we're a rural development coalition, started as a ministry for the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Some people don't know what the CBF is, so I tell them we're Jimmy Carter Baptist. That gives some folks an idea of what kind of Baptist we try to be. In 2001, the folks in our mission department said, we want to make a difference in the poorest places in America. And the guy who did that had a heart for cities. He thought for sure the worst poverty in America is in cities and urban spaces. So he says, what's the top 5 poorest counties in America? And they came back all rural. And he goes, well, what's the top 10? They were all rural. And he goes, well, the top 20. And they were all rural. So they shifted. He's like, maybe God's saying something to us. So they shifted focus to rural poverty. And that was the birth of what we called then the Rural Poverty Initiative. It was a 20-year commitment to the 20 poorest counties in America. All of those were rural. And none of those were in North Carolina, so congratulations, North Carolina. When I became a part of Together for Hope, I was from one of those areas and grew up there. I wasn't raised in church, got into CBF eventually, and I heard about this, and I was like, well, let's go, man. I know all those counties in Mississippi, so I got involved. And I said, well, can I start something in my hometown? And they were like, well, your hometown's not in one of the 20 counties. Bolivar County, where I'm from, at that time in 2017, the per capita income in Bolivar County was $9,008, which is very comparable to Eastern European countries. The county that was directly beside it, where my father worked all my life, was Sunflower County, and Sunflower County was in the top 20. Not only was it in the top 20, it was in the top 3, because the 3 poorest counties were all in the Mississippi Delta. Sunflower County, right beside Bolivar County's per capita income was $8,888. So the difference between my home county and Sunflower County was $200 per person. And I was like, that makes no sense. Why can't we do something in my hometown? So fast forward a couple of years, I end up being the director of Together for Hope, and I go, 20-year commitment, 20 poorest counties is a great idea. Now, let's get to business, right? So we shifted some things around on Together for Hope. I'll make you look up here. So our philosophy is asset-based community development. We'll get into that in a little bit. Asset-based community development is basically, we don't go into communities and say, what do you need? I come from a very poor town. If you went to our town and said, what do you need? What do you think that conversation is going to be like? It's exhausting. At the end of an hour, everybody's going to be slumped over, and we're going to be like, what do you do? Where do you start? And it's just overwhelming. So usually needs assessments have that effect on communities where it's like, let's talk about the worst part of you. That's not what we do. We ask a different question. It's just a simple question. What do you have? In a small town of 300 people, sandwiched between the Sunflower River and a railroad track, was a little town called Sidon. And we always start these things, what are your dreams for your towns? And this little 10-year-old boy popped his hand up immediately. All right, what's your dream for your town? He goes, I want a mall. 300 people in the middle of a cotton field, right? Their mayor, just a couple of months ago, their mayor, Johnny Mae Neal, called me and she goes, Jason, I was driving in town the other day and I saw this little plot of land and I thought, that might not be a mall, but that could be a strip mall. And his dreams inspired everybody and set everybody in tone. And that's what we're going to do today. So what are your dreams for Mount Olive? And you have to write that down, but I want you to hold on to that. What are your dreams for your town? And let's let those dreams inspire us. Let's have like a big, audacious goal with your dreams and do something about it. Now, what does Mount Olive have? What are the assets in Mount Olive? And how do we expand those assets for community development? That's what this meeting's about to be. Now, let me give you an exercise with needs assessment, okay? Try to buddy up with somebody, social distance and all that, but just, look at somebody else, all right? And you're going to have to look at each other. It's a painful exercise. If you're an introvert, you're going to hate me. But just look at each other, and I'm going to talk to you, all right? Okay, look at each other. That means you have to do this. All right. Now, you guys do this right here. Look directly at each other. Don't look at me. Find a partner. There you go. Right here. You're right here. You're a couple. Boom. All right. Now, look at each other. All right, here's you guys right here. See her? Green mask. There we go. Everybody's partnered up. All right. Now just look at each other. Don't say a thing. This is uncomfortable, I know it. But look at each other's eyebrows, hair, in my case, no hair. Spend some time, look at their ears. If they're wearing a mask, look at the mask, nose, lips, chin. Just hold on, just analyze each other's face. Keep looking. And when I count to 3, I want you to tell each other everything that's wrong with you. Just whatever the worst part of each other's face, okay? You guys ready for this? 1, 2, we're definitely not going to do that, all right? That's exactly what a needs assessment is. It's when you look at a community, check out everything about the community and say, this is what's wrong with you. And how uncomfortable is that to do it one-on-one? It's uncomfortable enough just to look at each other, much less look at each other and then have to say, this is what's wrong with your face. We don't do that as human beings, and we shouldn't do that to our communities. And that's how foundations work. If you want to get money, if you want to get a grant, what do you have to do? We're the worst. The children are uneducated. Our schools are failing. At-risk teenagers. You have to tell the worst story to get the most amount of money. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I'm refusing to do that with grants. They can keep their money. We have a better way to do it. And it's through assets. Imagine doing that same process right then, and then you have to tell each other, this is best qualities about your face. It's a whole lot easier to say that, right? It might be still uncomfortable, but it's not as uncomfortable as saying everything that's wrong. That's the difference between asset-based community development. This is where I came in with the 20 poorest counties. I was like, listen, poverty is a lot worse than that, and it's a lot larger than that. So we started looking around, how are we going to measure what's going to be our service area? And the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, has what's called persistent rural poverty. And that means that in a rural county, 20% or more of that county's population has lived below the federal poverty line for the last 30 years. So in 1980, we've been working with 1980, 90, 2000 data. This year, everything shifts because we got the new census data in 2020, and we just got the numbers back. So I haven't even had time to change the PowerPoint. So we've been focusing on the 301 counties of persistent rural poverty in America. That's a lot. And when you look at a map, let's see if I have a map next. Well, these are the regions. We called it 5 ethnogeographies of persistent rural poverty. The largest region is the Mississippi River Delta. In other words, if the Mississippi River runs through it, that's that region. There are 97 counties. Almost 1/3 of all of persistent rural poverty is in the Delta. The Black Belt goes from Alabama to Southern Virginia. You guys are in our region of Black Belt, okay? There are 80 counties there. There are about 40-something, 55 in Appalachia, 44 counties in native lands, and then 25 along the Rio Grande Valley. If you look at a map, that's what it looks like. The red is the counties, and then the different colors are the regions, the 5 ethnogeographies that I just described. Now there are actually over 444 persistent rural poverty counties. In other words, the last decade has been very devastating to rural America. We've added over 100 new counties to persistent rural poverty. It's devastating. It's devastating. So in that space, philosophy is asset-based community hope, asset-based community development. Our priorities of hope are education, health and nutrition, housing and environment, and social enterprise. We realized that if you did the first three, you had great education for kids, you had great housing and a great neighborhood for kids to grow up in, you had a great health, clinics to make them healthy. They graduate, they go to college, and they never come back home because there are no jobs here. So social enterprise is our attempt to talk about local economy of scale. How do we participate and build an economy that's not, we don't need 1,000 jobs in a town of 1,200 people, especially 1,000 jobs that could be exported at the whim of a federal policy. So how do we create a local economy that can never, you can send stuff out, but those jobs you can't send out? Like in the Delta is blues. Blues is only from Mississippi. That's where it came from. And how do we build an industry around that? So what is that local economy of scale where you can through innovation, create 20 jobs? And that 20 jobs changes 20 families, and 20 families is a pretty large percentage of 1,200 people. So that's the kind of idea of social enterprise. It's basically business with a social conscience, where profit is absolutely important, but it's equally important to social impact. It does both of those things. So we're doing some innovation stuff around that. That's our priorities of hope. So we're looking at organizations across rural America that concentrates at least on one of those 4 priorities. And these are our strategies: interventions, innovations, and advocacy. So most of the programs that we have are interventions. They're intervening in a system that creates poverty. So here we go, systems of oppression. This is food distribution, right? Why do you have food pantries? Because there's a lack of food. There's a system that's creating a lack of food. So you intervene in the system. This is what an intervention is. Why do you have after-school programs? Are kids just naturally dumber in rural America? Absolutely not. But there is an achievement gap. And what creates that achievement gap? A system. Yeah, it's a systemic. So you're intervening. An after-school program is an intervention into a program that creates kids that, underfunction. So interventions. Innovation, inventing new systems. So what do you do when the system is producing poverty or producing poor outcomes? You create a new system. It was a lot of fun. I was out in California a couple of years ago with the pioneers of social innovation folks, and they were like, we're going to invent a new world. It's very exciting to be in those kind of environments. And they literally are. They're not trying to reform a system. They're not trying to intervene in the system. They're creating whole new systems. And that's part of what we're doing. So we're in a food desert where you don't have a grocery store. Can we grow our own food? Do we, that's innovation. How do we create food co-ops? That's old school stuff, but it's still creating a different kind of system. And then advocacy. We're running this campaign in Mississippi called Grow the Good that's trying to increase SNAP incentive programs by about $700,000 in the state budget. And all that is, it's a double up food bucks. I don't know if you guys have something like that in North Carolina, where if you have an EBT card and you go to the grocery store and you buy vegetables, you can buy twice as many vegetables or twice as many fruit. So it literally doubles up every dollar. So we're trying to, get our state legislation to approve that through its state budget. So advocacy, absolutely. And advocacy is a change of the system. But, the system, the laws that govern our society, this is like intervening, advocating to say we can do this better. There's better ways to do it. So that's kind of our one-sheeter. We got some of this stuff up here. That's sitting right here. You can get that. You can get a little nifty sticker for your car, your computer, all that. Got a pen, and then we have a trifold that's like by the numbers, kind of the 20 years of impact that we've had. But the nature of rural poverty, you guys tell me if this makes sense. We think of rural poverty in terms of two things. One is abandonment. Almost every major region that we work in is the amount of poverty there is caused by some major industry that has abandoned labor. So my grandfather was a sharecropper in the cotton field. So when they built cotton pickers, what happened to all those guys they did not have jobs. Now, if you were in the fields, were you making so much money that you could say you're saving your money for your rainy day fund, and then as soon as they built cotton pickers, you were like, oh yeah, I've saved enough money, I'll move somewhere else? No, that's not the case, right? So the abandonment of labor through mechanization, and then manufacturing jobs. 30,000 jobs in the Mississippi Delta were lost through manufacturing. And as when NAFTA came, a lot of those both the factories that my parents worked in are now in Mexico. So all that industry. And it's not just the factory, but it's the diesel, it's the trucking industry that was exporting those goods. It was the diesel mechanics that worked on that. It was the tire companies that sold the tire. It was all the residual industry. When that stuff leaves, it abandons labor, and you have mass poverty. But when we think of poverty in America, the narrative in America is people are poor because they're lazy, sorry, don't want to work. Like we blame these folks for being poor. But what happens, most of us live in what's called rural overpopulation, where it's not that we have too many people here, it's that there's not enough jobs for everybody to be employed. And that's a systemic issue, right? And it's usually because of the abandonment stuff. The reservations are a little bit different. That's not where an industry has abandoned labor. It's kind of forced migration, where the federal government has pushed people into spaces that they've never lived before. The other one is access, and we know this well, right? Employment. If there's not a job in my town, where do I have to go to get employed? So, employment access, food access, food bank, food deserts, where in rural space, when you're 10 to 12 miles from a grocery store, you live in a food desert. In urban area, it's 3 miles. So, food access. Banking access. A lot of small towns don't have banks, or they had a bank, the bank shut down, and now they have to drive to XYZ to go get banking. So access to capital is pretty low. And then educational access, especially in some of the smaller towns that have gotten smaller, those schools have closed down, or the state has consolidated school districts. So now the kids have to be bused 45 minutes to go to school. And it just makes things harder. So that's kind of the nature of rural poverty in America, based on kind of our experience as we see it. COVID-19 is a brutal blanket that has been laid over rural America. So every major issue that we've been dealing with in rural America has only been accentuated with COVID. If people were hungry before COVID, they are hungrier now. If they didn't have as much access before COVID, they have less access now, and that's how that works. We've responded in pretty hefty ways. This is some of our food distribution. The picture with the guys unloading is from the Rio Grande Valley down to the Texas-Mexico border. Bottom left is car lines in the Delta where folks have lined up to come get their food boxes, and then the top right is the food boxes. So that's what we do. We have about 50 organizations across the country. But, we look at the way things are and we're like, okay, who are the good people there doing that work? Who's running the interventions? Who's running the innovation? who's running the advocacy stuff. I heard this morning that there was a kid in this church when he was young, got mad about the trains, and so he wrote a letter to the train folks talking about how when they ran, that's advocacy. I mean, that is natural-born advocates who kind of see the problem and be like, I'm going to do something about that. So let's talk about Mount Olive. That's it. Any questions about Together for Hope? Okay. This is about to be very interactive, okay? We have butcher paper up on the boards. Far right, to your far left is education. You can't see it because me. Health and nutrition, housing and environment, and social enterprises. So there's a lot of different ways to do asset mapping. I'm going to use our priorities of hope because we feel like these kind of 4 priorities are a holistic way to look at anti-poverty work, especially around assets, like where the assets are. So we're going to break you up into 4 groups, and I'm going to give you an exercise per group. So we're going to start here and go 1, this is your number, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you guys get numbers? 1, 2. There you go. Now, all the ones get into the back pew here and just, move around, get away, get together, but far enough away to feel comfortable. So the ones back here, the 2s will be up in the front here, 3s back, 4s here. Threes are the back right. All right, this is for your group. This is for your group. It's for your group. Okay. This is for your group. And this is where I normally do tell your partner everything that's wrong with them. But I spared you a little bit of that. Now, is that purple? Okay. I know that a lot of folks are like, it's lavender, it's lilac, or, all that. It's purple. You guys have purple things. Introduce yourselves, get to know each other a little bit, but I'm going to give you a timer. And what you're going to do is you're going to write every educational asset in your town on these purple pads, okay? And you're going to talk with each other about what's here and then write it out. I want you to think about the institutions, educational institutions, colleges, high schools, elementary schools, Bible schools, whatever kind of education, whatever. Think about like Lions Club, groups and associations, Lions clubs, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, fraternities, sororities, all that. Think about what they do in education. And then think about individuals, like so-and-so's a school teacher, so-and-so runs an after-school program, anything educational, all things education, and you're going to write them all down on these pieces of paper, as specific as you can, people's names, universities, all that, okay? So I'm going to time you, maybe, if I know how to, I'm going to time you on my phone because I don't know how to use my watch. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to talk amongst yourselves and write down all the educational assets in your town. Now, do you think 10 minutes is long enough? You got it. You're getting there. So go ahead and introduce yourselves to each other because I know some of you already know each other, some of you don't. But just go ahead and start talking to each other about who you are. Not one per note. each person, pass the notes around so that everybody has a blue piece of paper, and then start, writing all the things that you know down, all right? All right. I'm going to start it, and you have 10 minutes to write down all your educational assets. Go. And if you need a pen, I'll bring you one. One, two, three, four, 2, 4, 6. And you guys can talk to each other about who's doing what and where in town. And don't worry about writing so small. It's okay to write big. You should have enough notes to put down stuff. you a person who's going to name all your assets, and each group will name them, and as you finish naming them, you'll go, naming them, you'll go put them up on the educational, butcher sheet. So, who's group one? All right, group one, tell us about the educational assets, and now, and everybody else, listen to see if they say something that's not on your list.
Well, I think you have to look at educational assets, not just from one institution, because in this end of the county, as we just discussed, you cross the river and your opportunities are less, much less than they are in the Goldsboro area. So we tapped into not only the public schools that we have here, and UMO, but then we have a number of nonprofits and agencies that feed into the school system and into the community, such as you have Wages, and they have a tremendous presence here. You have Family First Support, which is counseling tapping into education. The agency that I work with, we have staff members in all of the schools in this end of the county, and we operate Team Core Community Service and Mediation, which reaches every aspect of the whole county for kids to be diverted from the juvenile justice system, which is education. We've got Steele Memorial Library. We've got Wayne Community, which feeds into this end of the county, and also we've got NC Works. Then you've got the Boys and Girls Club, and they not only offer tutoring and after-school programs, but they help keep kids safe and off the streets. You've got ADLA, which I'm not sure how much they are doing now, but they have been very active in the past. You've got Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. You've got the dance academies, and I know
Nice.
during the pandemic, these dance academies, they worked as virtual learning hubs. So that was a tremendous asset. Wayne Community offers a GED program that needs somewhere in this end of the county. You've got preschool programs and your child care, which is definitely educational. All the King's Children supplies all kinds of resources that enhance education. You've got Rotary Club, Exchange Club, Lions Club, they do supportive things for education. Maryland Pickle Company is tremendously supportive of any educational program when it comes to offering grants. You've got area churches who offer mentors that help to go into the schools. You've got Men of Faith, Integrity, and Character. You've got Backpack Buddies programs. You've got the Hurricanes football program. And then you've got the Partnership for Children, who manages and oversees daycares, and they also offer a number of programs.
10 seconds.
And that's it.
All right. So you guys listed a bunch of institutions, right, and associations. I didn't hear any people, so I hope the other groups have some people they want to talk. There's a lot of people in those there for sure. So let me get somebody from that group and to post your stickies on the educational piece. All right, this group right here. I think you're number 2, right? All right, same kind of stuff. Sunday school.
Virtual schools that are still open. Moy Library, Wayne Community College, the NC Live program that is available to all students who have a school lunch number. The Accelerated Career program is now available to every child with a school lunch number. Partnerships with Children, Storytime Online, the Imagination Library, NC Expo.
Where is the Imagination Library?
It goes straight to your house.
Oh, is that right? Oh, is this the Dolly Parton? Okay, yeah, okay.
The Park and Learn program, Student Scholars, which is a 6th grade program. The Live Out Loud Student Ministry, Future Teachers of America, and Collegiate Future Teachers of America. The Lions Club, Rotary, Farmer Alumni, Family Medicine, AARP, Wayne Community College, ADLA, the Mad Country,
So there you go. That's what I want to tap into. Like we have this whole host of retired teachers, right? So that's a huge asset. So as we put our assets up there, like that could be a generative conversation. Like, what do you do with all these retired teachers? Now, there's going to be some that's like, I don't ever want to see a kid in my, I'm done with that. But not all of them are going to be like that. So how do you leverage these assets that you have around that? Very good. So somebody needs to collect all your stickies and go stick them on the educational board, which is over on the white door. All right, number 3, same kind of exercise. Yep.
Education, we have a Mustard Seed Academy, and it's actually from the town I'm in, which is maybe 10 minutes over. North Dukeland schools, all the schools are there together. University of Mount Olive, there's Shiner, Carver Elementary, there's Kitty College, Mount Olive Middle School, Rawls Chapel also has a tutoring center, we've got Rotary Club, Boys and Girls Club, Community Schools, which, you mentioned that, we have library, story time for Little League. That's the only way we can say that, but I know that the kids go out, I think it was 2 days a week since COVID, I don't know what's happening there now. Obviously, we have all the King's children. I personally have a lot of clients that are school teachers and retired school teachers, so, it's a tight-knit community around here because everybody knows everybody. If you ever need anything, they obviously go, all the churches have their teaching programs,
You got it. You can stick them on this whiteboard here. All right, bring us home in education right here.
I'll be happy to just go ahead and stick mine up there because that's the team forward.
There you go, there you go.
That's it, certainly wages and Boys and Girls Club and our public school systems and University of Mount Olive is what we primarily talk about. There's obviously a whole lot more than that.
You got it. So just having them listed out, and look how long it took us, almost 10 minutes. It took us nearly as long to say the educational assets that you have as it did for you to write them down. That's an enormous pool of resources when it comes to education, okay? So the next color notepad that you got was blue. That's going to be around health and nutrition. So what kind of health and nutrition assets are in your town? And you can say, like, the mayor might have like a health club, there might be gyms here, the athletic stuff at the schools, all the summer food programs, anything to do with health and nutrition, hospitals, doctors' offices, all things health and nutrition. So go. Anything related to food would be in health and nutrition. And some of these things are going to be cross domains, that's for sure. Like a park would definitely be health and nutrition, but that'll also be an environment too, because public parks are part of the environment. Yep. Is there any tracks, any walking trails, all that? You want me to grab your purple sheet, or is that just for you? Did you have a sheet? You already put it up there? Okay. Health and nutrition, boom. Number one thing is what? Gyms. Okay, awesome. All right. Number one thing, health and nutrition. What is it?
a lack of.
No, you can't say your assets. It's assets.
We have a number of programs.
Okay. Is there a hospital? Is there a hospital here?
Willis and Goldsboro, yes,
Okay,
we have
okay.
a hospital. We have a.
Medical clinic? Medical clinic? Yep. There you go. There you go. Awesome.
They do.
All right, let's try to do one per sheet instead of listing them all out. How's that sound? I am. It's like marriage. The longer you're married, the harder it is. I get it. All right, when you think of health and nutrition here in town, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Okay, okay. Okay. What about your biking program? 100%. You definitely put that biking program down. What's the first thing you think of with health and nutrition in Mount Olive? Immunization. What about like all the COVID stuff? Like all that kind of stuff is also under health too, right? So, okay. Yeah. Probably has a pharmacy there. Probably have a pharmacy at Walmart. Is there other pharmacies? Like list them all out. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Now, be as specific as you can. You know, if you can't think of the name of that pharmacy, like it's on that highway, or yeah. And try to be as specific as possible with, like, you know, we have 3 pharmacies. This group just said 3 pharmacies. Like, say what they are. If you can remember the name. If you can't remember the name, think about the street or what neighborhood it is. Be as specific as possible when you name the groups, too. Oh, now, looking good, looking good. Yes. Yep, all that.
Well, there are a number then of dentists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many ophthalmologists or some lady out here might be doing it. That's right. Chiropractors.
Let me ask you, is there any like local person that everybody's like, you need to go see so-and-so? Like, and this is like weird spiritual Southern stuff, but my Aunt Oli could touch warts and they go away, right? And so like everybody in town, like if they had a wart, they'd go to my Aunt Oli and it'd make it go away. I mean, is there, yeah? See?
There was a man in my community, but he passed away.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know what it is, but that stuff, yeah, okay. Is there any kind of local health initiatives happening right now? Like sometimes a mayor will have a health club and they all like meet up and they go walk around, you know, the track.
I've got it on here. I'm putting concussion screening.
Concussion screen. What about any churches or anything that does like high blood pressure screening or, you know, blood drives? Okay. Okay, yeah. Make sure those are on here too, for sure. Yeah, COVID is a massive interrupter. But, you know, there are also, related to that is the organizations are like, okay, here, come get masks, come get gloves, come get hand sanitizer. We had in Jackson the first distillery since Prohibition opened up, and they made vodka and whiskey and all this, and they turned their vodka into hand sanitizer. So, yeah. So I don't know if they can turn vinegar into hand sanitizer at the pickle shop, but. How's it going over here? Have you run out of resources, or are you still naming them? Getting close? All right, almost there. All right, you got about less than a minute left, so start determining who your new speaker is going to be. Your last speaker has to sit down. You have to have a new speaker for your group this next go round. And because group 4 went last time, they get to go first this time. So this is group 4. Tell us what kind of health and nutrition assets are in Mount Olive.
Okay, we have Mount Olive Pediatrics, Make a Difference, Hope Wellness Center, Mount Olive Family Medicine Center, Goshen Medical, the WIC program, ADLA, Meals on Wheels, Dr. Brubeck, Lane and Associates, Fit for Life, school nurses, Harper Drugs, Walgreens, Mount Olive Pharmacy, Walmart Pharmacy, UMO Track Complex, Westbrook and Nelson Park, and another dental. Oh, and Food Line, Walmart, and Piggly Wiggly.
Excellent. Go ahead and stick them up there on the thing. All right, number 3, what you got? I'm glad you said about mental health. I wonder how many more mental health, opportunities there are here, And listen, mental health and trauma right now with COVID is a serious business. So that's going to be important assets to have. All right, you can go ahead and list them all up there. All right, in reverse order, number 2. That's okay.
Food boxes can be purchased at some of those local grocery stores. We have Mount Olive Parks and
You said farming. Is there any like CSAs, community, anything like that where the people are making, growing vegetables and then people will buy a box per month and they bring them the food boxes, anything like that? Okay. That would definitely be under here too, so. Okay. Go ahead and stick your stickies up there. All right, what else? And number 1, what you got? Good call. Gotcha. Excellent. So is there a place to apply for SNAP benefits in town? Everybody have to do that online? So they would have to go to the county office and go, okay. So there's that's good to know. Those kind of registrations, helping people register, are that's definitely under the health and nutrition category. Anybody else? All right, next set of group is going to be housing and environment. So are there any kind of affordable housing programs? Is there any kind of refurbishing housing programs? Is there any parks that people can take, any public space, anything like that with housing and environment? Any programs to like clean up initiatives? Anything out of town hall? Any things that the churches are doing? Think along those lines and list all the housing and environment assets in your town. And that's going to be on the yellow sheet. And listen, this go round, instead of putting multiple ones on a sheet, put one per sticky, okay? One per sticky. Okay? Main Street, it's pretty. I ate there last night. That is an environmental asset. Your Main Street is an asset. Yep, Center Street. Yep. You said there's a pickle festival every year? That would be an environmental type thing, right? So what kind of festivals, what kind of things exist here for the environment? Think about shared space. Think about like parks, opportunities like that. Also think about rental assistance and things of that nature around housing, utilities assistance, all those kind of programs too.
They do register people that have cancer, so that's what I was.
Think about any shared space, sidewalks, you know, like the downtown area where the rain, that's, I ate at Ribeye the other night. I thought that was a pretty space. So things like that are also environmental assets, beautification. There you go. We just heard banking back here, so think about banks and any kind of programs where qualified homeowner programs, think of that. About a minute left, guys. All right, start identifying your new speaker. Surprise. All right, here we go. We're going to start with group 2 this go around. We started 1 and 4. We'll go in the middle. So, group 2, what kind of housing and environment assets?
You've got Salvation Army Rapid Housing, McDonald's and Apartments, affordable housing, Brush for Kindness.
Is this private, that repairs existing homes?
The Mayor's Council on Housing, UMO First Year Experience Cleanup, UMO Athletic Cleanup, Church of Network Programs, Westbrook Park, Nelson Park,
All right, number 3. What you got?
We have some, we should have the names of them, but low income apartments or fixed income apartments, nonprofit housing authority, local parks, churches and about benevolence, ACI, thrift shop, wages, CSDG program, local churches that build roofs, ramps and renovations, wages weatherization program, Habitat for Humanity, and the Outlaw Foundation, that will pay for utilities for those going through cancer, and or day movement.
Any senior, like, assisted living programs here in town?
That was what we were saying, the levy, we couldn't figure out the way to. They go there, once together, got, Dollar General and Bucking.
All right, you guys can come up here and put your sticky bill here. Number 1, your turn. I can't hear you.
Public housing for housing authority, city of Louisville, Habitat for Humanity, Matthew Whittle is among that person there. We got UMO Freshman Community Service, project where it's like, students from Manala that go out there and country community service. We also have the First Baptist Church, First Baptist Church, that's the Parks and Recreation, 4-day movement is also a program that serves Manala City, basically to help out with homelessness. We also have, Housing Authority, Southern Bay also, additional renovations, on a couple of blocks here. We have a domestic violence shelter.
Ooh. What's the name of the domestic violence shelter? Okay. Okay.
And then we also have the wages CSDG department. They also help out with housing assistance, relocation assistance, and that's all we have.
Okay. Is that it? You're like, that's all we have. All right, number 4.
We have the wages weatherization program, the First Baptist, utility assistance.
Okay, I don't think they can hear you in the back.
We have the wages weatherization program, the First Baptist utility assistance, Center Street District,
Hmm.
Habitat for Humanity, the African reform for the town cleanup, Mount Olive Housing Authority, Nelson and Westwood Park, ACIA Thrift Store.
Okay, awesome. We can stick that up there on the housing and environment. Now, I heard, when we started this, I heard somebody say, well, we're not going to have many here. Did you have more than you thought you did? Yeah. All right, last section, social enterprise. Now, when you hear social enterprise, it is kind of a buzz term, but it is business. Think of business. A true social enterprise is a business that is committed to social impact, which means they are committed to paying their employees living wages. They're committed to having, lessening their environmental impact. They're committed to creating products that are good for society, all that kind of stuff. So it's basically a great, great business. We have to create, business has been so tough lately, we have to invent words to say really good business. But social enterprise is in that category. So think about your town. Think about the major businesses in the town to the little businesses in town. And you should even think about, like, does so-and-so do hair on Saturday, right? Does so-and-so mow yards? So think about specific people in this social enterprise piece too, because you have a lot of individuals in this space that provide services for the town, and whether it's their side gig or their hustle or whatever. that needs to be included here as well. So we're going to give you 10 more minutes, and this will be our last exercise. So go. Almost there. This is the home stretch. All right, in that last minute, so you guys can start picking your fearless leader, fearless speaker. And as you do that, when you leave, I want to get your name and information here. So it is a homemade sign-up sheet or sign-out sheet. Just your name, organization, email address, and phone number. If you don't want to have anything to do with us, you don't have to put it on there. But I do want to follow up with you. What we'll do is I'm going to take all this data that you gave me, and I'm going to have our team kind of crunch that space. So we're going to come up with a report on Mount Olive that's basically taking all the things that you've done and putting it into a list of things. And what we'll do is have the name of the organization and how many times it was listed. So I know you guys were like, oh, this is redundant. But all that means is that there's going to be some things that kind of come to the top around housing because all of you know it, right? So you've said it multiple times. And that's why it's okay to say the same thing over again. All that means is that that's the most well-known thing, and we need to know that in the report, right, when we give it back to you. So once we're done with that, we'll email the group so that you can all have it. We're not doing anything secret with this information. This is the information that you've provided to us, and we're just giving it back to you in a new form, okay? All right, number 3, you get to start us off with this last stretch. So what do you have in the form of social enterprise assets? Awesome. Take your stuff and stick it on the board. All right, we'll stay in the back. So number whatever you are. 1. Which is not just a location, but a restaurant that I had lunch at today. There you go. Awesome. Number 2. And has anybody named Farming Industries yet? Because that's a business. I mean, I drove through a lot of fields to get here. But it's interesting, we haven't talked about farming so much yet, right? Okay. Maybe. All right, what's your assets, number 4?
Mount Olive Pickle, Butterball, Southern Bank, University of Mount Olive, Highway 55, Ribeyes, Puck Wellness, Town of Mount Olive, Handy Mart, Friendly Mart, Piggly Wiggly, Walmart, Sloan Cabinet, Sleep In, C&M Plumbing, Mount Olive Municipal Airport, Goshen Medical, Mount Olive Family Medicine, Jones Tree Value, and numerous used car dealerships.
No, well, those guys are making a killing right now. I mean, used cars are very expensive right now. We just tried to get we just got a new car, and we did this Toyota RAV4 hybrid, and there was one that was 2 years old that was the same thing, was 2 years older and had more mileage on it, and the price was the exact same thing. So we were like, it's ridiculous. All right, folks, we didn't start off doing it one-on-one. So each one of those stickies on education has a whole lot on it, right? But this is what your community has. These are its assets in education, health and nutrition, housing, environment, and social enterprise. Now, before we did this, if somebody said, does your town have a lot of assets? Would your first response have been, yes, we have an incredible amount of assets? Generally not, right? I mean, and anytime you're in an economically depressed or declining environment, nobody's talking about what they have. And the question is, why? This is not your goals. This is not your aspirations. This is your reality. You don't have any goals set from this exercise. We didn't say what town do we have to, we're not even talking about those dreams. We're just talking about what you have. This is what you have. And it's a lot. So whenever you think about Mount Olive, I want you to think about this. And I want you to reframe the way you think about your town, because it'll make a tremendous impact over the long haul. When you know the resources that you have and then you leverage those resources for community development, you move in the right direction. Because there's nothing worse than everybody start telling the same story about reality, and that story is a bad thing. Because then people start believing that story, and then they start making that story a reality. And it's just like, maybe some of you are worriers. And the worst thing in the world to do is start thinking all the bad things. Oh, what if I get COVID? Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We're going to have to lock this down. So you start telling yourself this bad story. And where is the reality of that story? Right here in your head. It actually doesn't exist. The bad stories that we tell ourselves don't exist in reality. You're just telling yourself that story because you're afraid it may happen. So if you're going to tell yourselves imaginary stories, tell yourself good stories. Because they're just as real as the bad ones. They don't exist yet. But if you tell those stories, you might live into them. And you have a much higher probability of living into that good story you tell yourself if you tell yourself that story. Because we end up living out the narratives we tell ourselves. And this right here is the true narrative of Mount Olive that you've said so. So when you go out in Mount Olive, when you come to church, when you go to your organization, and I know, listen, when you're in the grind and you're working with folks who are struggling every day, it's exhausting, it's tiring. You take on that trauma that they're experiencing. And then you go home and you try to pay your own bills and you're like, I know that's hard. But the fact is, you live in a town with a lot of resources. And now it's your job to reframe your town to your town. You are the reframing ambassadors for Mount Olive moving forward. So that when you're in circles and people are like, man, I just, it's so hard, like, I can't believe it's happening. Say, you know, some of that might be true, but let me tell you another truth about Mount Olive. Let me tell you about the good people that are in this educational space. Let me tell you about the good people in the health and nutrition. Let me tell you about housing and environment. That's a lot of housing and environment assets. Let me tell you about social enterprises in our town. You have a different narrative to tell. And that will create a cultural ethos in this town. It can bring back the town, especially if you have it in conversations like this. Now, I talked about a needs assessment, telling each other how ugly we are. Imagine if we just spent the last 45 minutes talking about all the needs we have. How do you think you'd feel right now? Would you be looking at all the needs going, man, we are a strong community? It doesn't work that way. We all have needs. And when you're living in areas of persistent poverty or just poverty, you see it all the time. That's why you don't think of the assets first, because the need is kind of in front of your face. But the fact of the matter is, wherever you have people, you have assets. Whether it's 300 people in the middle of a cotton field in the Delta, or whether it's Mount Olive, North Carolina. You are the assets. You are. You are the greatest asset that Mount Olive has. So take your assets and do something with it, right? We'll turn this around as fast as we can. Give us a month, though. We'll turn it around to you, give it back to you. And the really cool thing about assets, once you see where all your strengths are, you'll also see where the gaps are. And so then you can see, because there's gaps here, how do we strengthen these assets and make them even stronger to kind of alleviate that gap? Those are kind of some next steps. Not just strategic planning, but strategic doing. Because strategic planning just usually doesn't work. But strategic doing is a different kind of thing. So we'll follow up. Come forward. Give me your information so that you can be in the information loop. We'll spit this back out to you real quick, and then you can tell us, like, oh, yeah, this isn't on that report that you gave us. I've thought about it since we've had that meeting. But make sure you give me your information. And outside of that, we're done with the exercises. It's a pleasure to meet you all you reframing ambassadors. I look forward to coming back, hanging out with you, and seeing what next steps might look like for us, okay? Any questions before we take off? I'll turn it over to Dennis.
My question is this.
Yep.
There are a lot of really good organizations represented here tonight. What next? I know you're going to give us a report, but what have you seen in other small communities that come out of this kind of exercise that maybe provide some umbrella oversight or direction that we can all kind of get some synergy together?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you this: you truly have a lot of resources. I've gone to town to do these things, and I've kind of been rubbing my hands together, like, oh, is there enough assets here to get excited about? And without fail, it always is. So you have a lot of resources here. I don't, in some of our towns, what has emerged out of these conversations is we don't have anything in this space. Why don't we create something in that space? So some organizations have been created out of asset mapping in other places. Out of the ones I've been a part of, you feel more like a town in West Virginia that is about 11,000. And there, they had a lot of organizations, but they were all working, in isolation. And so what they did was created an umbrella that organized all that and brought people into cooperation with each other so that it expedited services and stopped duplicating services. So just kind of an organizational structure came in Bluefield, which was why, I mean, once they knew where everything was and kind of got that a little bit better, then it just spawned all like a maker space and a couple of really cool things that nobody had on their radar. It just, that kind of energy spawned some new things. So that's kind of the spectrum of what can be, but it's you guys. You get to determine what this future looks like, whether it's a creation of an entity or not, or a committee of people, a coalition. That's up to you guys. But we'll follow this up with a report. I'd love to grab some of you or all of you at another time, hopefully without an ice storm or anything like that. Maybe even in a space where we won't be anxious about proximity to each other. But that's up to this body. It truly is up to the community to determine what you want. But that's not where we start. This is where we start with what we have. So. All right. Thank you, guys.